governor will see you now. Mark, my facilities manager, and I were in the waiting room outside of our state's governor's office. We had met with Donna, his chief of staff, on our dilemma several times. This was our first meeting with him directly, though, on this topic. We had a key ask and a fork in the road opportunity for our business. Literally, the location of our main manufacturing facility would be decided in the next 20 minutes. The door opened and Donna led us into the governor's office for this key meeting. Hi, I'm Phil Coerper, Managing Director of Ringling Business Solutions. In today's episode of the CEO's Field Manual, we'll unpack how working with your political stakeholders can be both very frustrating, but also vital to solving real business problems. We'll relive some critical moments when business outcomes relied on politicians and government policy. Now, unlike a typical ROI business equation where we balance investment levels with proportional returns, in the area of gaining access and influence politically, the investment is high, especially on your time, and the returns can be fleeting, if not rare. If you played in this arena, you certainly felt the many waste of time moments involved. So given this, why spend time and resources to develop political relationships when returns can be so rare? The answer to this was best described by Carl. Now, Carl was my engineering director, and he's the one in this first story. Carl worked for me at a mid-market sized company and was heavily involved in the regulatory side of our business. This included the industry associations who wrote rules and standards and the political agencies like Department of Energy, EPA. Those were the ones that regulated this particular industry. The owners of the company were divided on the value of this. They sure saw the costs in both Carl's time and participation costs on dues and travel. What are we getting back from this was a common question asked. As the president of the company, I had seen in my past how having relationships with regulators and politicians added value. So I decided to engage in Carl's activity and see for myself what he was doing. I ended up learning a ton from him. He was really good at this. So I joined the board at the main trade association and also served on several committees. I also joined in visits to Washington, D.C. to meet congressional leaders and see the lobbying firsthand. What I found was months and sometimes years of work where we invested and got little back. We gained some insights, but rarely much that was really tangible. Then, at a rules committee call, something occurred that I found interesting. A new efficiency rule was being discussed and was written by the larger manufacturers in the association. The way the rule was written would have been devastating for our design and would have been a huge problem for us had it gone through. Because we were there and had strong relationships, we were able to amend the rule so it served the entire market, not just a few of the large players. As Carl said after the call, you never know when something will hit the table that can impact us. We need to be there at that moment or be stuck living with the outcomes. Another example, in the 1990s, I participated in the rules being written in Los Angeles for the Clean Air Act. At the table were the regulators, advocates, and equipment manufacturers. Now, Los Angeles was focused on their goals to reduce emissions. Both the regulators and advocates were on a mission for equipment like ours. And very understandable. The air pollution in LA was as non-attainment as you could get. The manufacturers also care about clean air, believe it or not. But we also brought real concerns about the operation and safety of the equipment and the costs and pricing for the new technologies. You've seen this get out of balance yourself. For example, does a sufficient amount of water come out of your faucet these days? Does your modern washer and dryer actually clean your clothes as well as the old ones did? When the system works well, the regulators meet their goals while the equipment still does its primary function, safely and hopefully affordably. When it misses, we can have poor society outcomes and also poor market outcomes. The manufacturers who invest in R&D in the areas being regulated help equipment compliance and can gain some market advantage by being at the forefront. In this case, the LA regs achieve the target on emission reductions. Just compare smog in LA today with 1995. But we also did not go so far as to create a standard that no one could meet without making the equipment less functional in the first place, like those faucets. The company was also able to earn market preference by leading tech development that met the new standards. In this next example, we needed action. Our manufacturing plant was in a small Midwestern town outside of a large city. We were expanding the plant, so we needed to submit the expansion plans to the city and counties for approvals. Normal stuff. Over the years I was there, I invested in relationships with the mayor and county officials. I had a specifically strong relationship with the mayor's chief of staff, Steve. It had been months and we were having a hard time getting our final approvals. The county regulators were also constantly coming up with new and novel pushbacks. In one case, they said the planned small utility equipment in front of the building were eyesores and needed to be moved. Across the street was a contracting company that had a huge yard of heavy equipment, dirt, rusting supplies. That was the actual eyesore, not our little boxes. Anyway, I asked the county for an update, and they again gave us the runaround. I called Steve and told him where we were at. We're delayed from expanding this plant and adding jobs here. I need these approvals, Steve. We've met all their key concerns. Now it's just getting silly. The next day, I had approved designs in hand. The small utility boxes in front still intact. Again, years of building, so we had the contacts at the moment needed. Also notice the chief of staff added the value more than the mayor did in this case. This is one of the most practical recommendations in this episode. You're going to spend much more time meeting and developing relationships with staff than elected officials. Don't feel slighted by this at all. It's the staff members who often are most valuable and available. It's a politician's job to get elected. It's staff job to get things done. Next, an example of maximum impact from a visit to DC. Carl and I are in Washington for a conference. We set aside a few days to make the rounds. We hit Congress, the EPA, Department of Energy, HUD, all areas that could impact our markets. Our market association also occasionally hosted a political trip like this. Now that can be okay, but not nearly as strong as personal ties you develop. Carl had worked on this process for years and was very good at it. We got the meetings we needed with the people who knew us. They knew our market, and any pending regulations that may be of interest were on the table. A side comment here. Know what you want. In this case, a pending new reg on new construction had a clause that we felt discriminated against our design approach. We had a draft of alternative language that we felt accomplished the same thing intended while keeping the playing field more level. If you want something done, it must be that specific, or you'll just end up glad-handing folks. Our senators and representative staff all heard this story, and we asked what could we do to impact the write-up. When the write-up came out of committee, the clause was changed. Now, you would not expect any of our representatives to know the difference had we not been there and been engaged. We had to be present. That certainly doesn't mean we'll always be successful. I've lost many battles at associations to the larger guys on rules and policy. I've often tried for years to improve existing regulations and often did not prevail. However, if you're not there, you lose on everything and often not even know it's happening until it's too late. This next story is a cautionary tale. A project gets hijacked. I had a customer who was planning to build out their power plant using our equipment. Jim, the plant GM, asked me to attend a public comment meeting where they would be available to answer questions about the project. I'm prepared to answer technical questions about the equipment as needed. The town meeting, though, quickly deteriorated into a complaint session. People were not actually there because of the project in many cases. They were there because they hated the truck traffic to and from the plant. The politicians and regulators at the meeting ran for cover, as Jim had not developed any strong relationships there. The project got delayed, and years were spent trying to improve the traffic patterns around the plant. Had Jim been engaged, he could have been proactive on knowing the complaints and working with his contacts to improve the roads and reduce noise in the surrounding neighborhoods. He knew the nearby residents did not like the trucks, but he missed the opportunity to work with government officials to make it better. Now just imagine if he had proactively advocated to the city and county to expand the bypass all along. He could have been a hero, but now was spending years on defense. His planned expansion was on hold, and he was dragging the politicians, kicking and screaming, to complete a road improvement project. Final story, and this is about how political winds can shift quickly. It's the first months of a new administration, and we, along with other companies in our space, have a meeting with the new deputy director of the EPA. It was in Washington, in a conference room. There was about, 20 of us attending. The spokesman for one of the larger firms brings forward pending regulations that our association and previous administrations have been working on for years. That balance between regulation and business health seems to have been reached. Several others weighed in with their support for the new regs. This one was not really my rodeo, so I just listened in. After a few more spoke up, the new deputy director chimed in. "I've yet to hear anyone comment on the impact on the consumer here," he said. "I get it that the advocates and manufacturers agree on this, but who represents the consumer's interest?" The two previous administrations would have likely walked past this, but we had a new sheriff. The lesson is political winds can shift, and the shifts are sometimes dramatic. You can't control that, but be prepared. Have your plan B. A few other, safety tips when developing political relationships. First, party does not matter. I've gotten high levels of support from both sides of the aisle over the years. You're a jobs creator in their district, so you're someone both sides will want to know and hopefully help. Secondly, fundraisers. You're going to get many invites. This is where you should decide how much personal relationships with politicians actually matter to you. Do you like running with this crowd, or are you more interested in basic business support when needed? Either way, I still say go to as many of these as you can. You should make some contributions, but you're not obligated to give much money unless it fits your political lifestyle and personal interests. I personally hate going, but it's mostly painless, not a bad networking event, and you may get a good meal out of it in the end. So let's hit some takeaways. Invest in long-term relationships with your political representatives, and most importantly, their staff. The upfront investment is time-consuming and often seems wasteful, but it only takes a few critical moments to get important, positive outcomes. Secondly, be active with associations and agencies that have impact with rules and regulations in your space. You'll likely get some pushback with what looks like a boondoggle, especially to meetings often in some very nice locations. But lean into being active. Companies and advocates that have their own agendas are engaged. You need a seat at the table. Like Carl said, be at the table at that moment or be stuck living with the outcomes. Third, when you ask for something, try to know exactly what you want. Be informed, specific, and ready to help. Political stakeholders are easy to lament, but they are very busy and are dealing with requests like this 24/7. Know your issue, know the context, and be clear on what you want. You'll win some more outcomes, and the staff will gravitate towards working with you because you're prepared. Back to the governor's meeting. We walk in and refresh introductions. I had met the governor before. He was, of course, welcoming and friendly. "Great to see you again, Phil. Thanks again for all you do for our community." "Governor," I said, "as Donna knows, our building lease is up, and I'm afraid you have some stiff competition. Both Virginia and Ohio are working to get us to consolidate there. Now, we love it here, and our preference is to stay, but they are putting on a very hard sell. Donna and the state development team have put together some nice options, but I wanted to tell you in person that they are well short of what others are offering us. The governor and Donna looked over a document she had prepared for us. Governor, I don't need the world, or even for you to match everything on the table. My ask is for the state to extend the hiring tax credits for several more years and firm up the investment tax area. Donna knows what I have in mind on both. These are pay-as-you-earn programs, and we will certainly use them to add jobs and tax revenues for the state. That, with what your team has already provided, closes the deal for us to stay. He looked at Donna and said, I don't need these manufacturing jobs moving out of our state. Let's make this happen. We buttoned up the details and renewed the lease. In this last example, all the lessons kind of converged to help us get what we needed and when we needed it. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the CEO's Field Manual. In our next episode, we'll look at company Christmas party chaos and the best company picnic ever. We'll see you then. Thanks, everybody. Please subscribe, and we'll see you at a future video.